introduce you to Dave Lomo, the city engineer. The purpose of tonight's meeting, he's got it on the screen. The council quorum is present tonight. They're not going to be taking any action, and to my knowledge, they're not taking any questions. They're here for the information just like you are. No decisions will be made tonight. This is information. It's an opportunity for the city engineer to provide you and the council the information on the proposed street project for Pleasant Road. With that, I'll turn it over to Dave.
Thank you, Marty. Everybody good for hearing me?
Yep.
All right, good. I tend to yell at these things, so I'll try to avoid doing that because we don't need that. All right. As Marty said, informational meeting only, no council action tonight. As you notice, the council is dispersed amongst you guys. They're here with the residents, and they're here to listen just like the rest of you guys. I will certainly take feedback and that kind of thing from you guys after this at the meeting here. And we'll talk back and forth. The goal here is for this to be a discussion as much as anything. I'll run through a presentation on the project here. I'll probably breeze through it fairly quick. As an engineer, I don't make very entertaining presentations, and so it's a little dry. But as we go on here, like I said, no council. I want to stress no council action on this evening. So we'll compile feedback, and it'll be discussed at a later meeting when it'll appear on the agenda. So if you guys want to watch that agenda in the future, to note that Pleasant Road discussion will be coming, that'd be the way to do it that a little bit. So, here we live on it or have a cabin on this stretch of roadway here from County Road 137 on the north to the dead end or the cul-de-sac on the southwest side there. So, it's a good sized project here, and many of you guys know the reason we're here regarding the street for sure. So, brief discussion on why the roadway's in bad shape. So as we look at these curves on this line here, and I know these are difficult to see from where you guys are sitting, this talks about the normal life cycle of a roadway. A road that we, in this area, would expect it to last for about 20 years, an asphalt road. Does anybody know when that was last paved? Our records are conflicting. Anybody have any idea?
87.
That's pretty precise, thank you. So 87, all right, well that certainly means that we have exceeded our 20-year lifespan. There are things you can do to bump us back from, as we start here in a very good, the pointer doesn't work very well on these screens, so I apologize. But as we start here in a very good brand new roadway, it's a constant decline. It's fairly gradual at first, then eventually it gets steeper. If you can catch preventative maintenance at that point there where you see the new grass starting with an overlay or something like that, you can delay the decay of the street, but you'll never get back to the 20-year lifespan like you would if you reconstructed it. So what we're after here is we're past the point where we can just do a simple overlay on this project on the street. We're looking for a little more elaborate of a fix, a more permanent fix out there, and that would be for a full reconstruction of that street. So. All right, existing conditions out there. We have a 22-foot wide, give or take, asphalt pavement. It probably is 24 in spots. It's probably less than 22 in spots, but as an average, it's about 22 feet. A little over a mile long, we call it a mile and a tenth there at 5,800 feet. As I noted, the pavement has exceeded its useful life. There's cracking, there's spots where there's frost boils. I'm sure plenty of you guys have coffee stain shirts from hitting a pothole. Those kind of things happen. They're not unique to your street. You guys do have an awful lot of people on that street, so I certainly understand the concerns. But we know that that street's not in great shape, and the cracking underneath gives us some idea that it's probably not related just to the pavement age. There's probably some deficiencies underneath in the subgrade, in the aggregate base, whether there is any at all, because oftentimes there wasn't much put underneath there, and maybe there's 2-3 inches of asphalt up there, which just isn't adequate for what we see for traffic on that roadway. All right, sanitary sewer, the other utilities out there. As you know, there's obviously electricity out there because most of us can't do without that. Cable, the other small utilities, privately held. In addition, there's sanitary sewer out there that was installed in the 2005 project there. It's a low pressure system, as you guys well know. You have grinder stations at your homes that feed into a central main that heads up northerly toward near the Water's Edge restaurant, and then it's pumped to Industrial Park and then to Cold Springs. So that's a little overview of the sanitary sewer. It's mostly installed outside of the roadway surface. The pipes themselves are located in the ditch. In most cases, there are crossings of the roadway, but the vast majority of it's located outside of the roadway surface. And that's why that street wasn't redone when the sewer project was done in 2005. Is because they were able to directional drill most of those mains and maintain minimal crossings of the roadway. Water main, there's existing water located about 700 feet south of County Road 137. Most of you guys know where the wells sit at out in the field as you're coming into the development, into your homes there. A couple of municipal wells sit out in the field. There's a 12-inch water main that runs from there to the north toward the water tower. Here is a map of the existing water system as it sits now. Again, I apologize everybody over there, I'll point to this one. There's the existing water. It's an elevated storage tank installed in 2005 as well. It serves the Brentwood Hills area, and everything in this area was intended for it, as I have a map from the initial planning here that's coming up next. Here are the municipal wells. Here's the water main I was talking about. This graphic is from the 2004 study of the comprehensive water system. So at that time, the system was determined that eventually one continuous system from both the core city of Rockville, both lakes, both Pleasant and Grand Lakes, would be included in one large water system. Obviously, that's something that's going to take time to accomplish, and still is likely the ultimate goal. But as we're sitting here 10 years later, a full 10 years later, we haven't made much progress on this, and it's because development slowed down that was spurring a lot of this, a lot of the needs. Again, this is going to be a little bit tough to see here. Initially, during this 2004 study, the water tower was intended to be placed between Lena Lane and Berg Street, pretty close to County Road 6 there, and until the private developer came with an opportunity for the city to put it further north at a lesser expense because it was available and the land was given, well, not given, but the land was available for the city to put that tower on a nice spot, honestly, next to Highway 23 and 94. Good for visibility, but it's even better for the elevation it's at and the function of the system. So, as you can see, from this water tower here, whether it's here or here, the thought process is the same. The goal was to make a water main loop around Pleasant Lake.
Want to use the pointer?
I have one, but it doesn't show up on the screen,
Oh,
unfortunately.
right.
So thank you, I appreciate that, but I'm stuck with pointing with my finger on these here. So
All right.
I appreciate that. Thank you, though. So the one portion of the water main loop was intended to go down Pleasant Road, and then further along the section lines till we got back onto the other side on Lake Road over there. So it's certainly something that's been in the plans for a long time, and that's why you're hearing discussions about it now. It's because it's been the plan, and it, you know, that's why we're considering in conjunction with any street improvements. So briefly, the proposed improvement process here would be if we would do an entire street and water project. I'm going to go through discuss it as though we were. And like I said, those details have not been decided. Nobody's ordered any improvements. Honestly, nobody's even ordered a terribly in-depth study or anything like that, but that's all been done in the past, so it'd be a matter of combining old studies together. But so at this point, we would be removing the asphalt pavement, and then you would, following the removal of the asphalt pavement, I would actually have them grind it in place so as to have a temporary driving service, because you guys don't have other options to get in and out of there, so we're gonna have to do this under traffic. It's gonna be let's call it a complicated construction project to make sure everybody can get in their driveways, and that's going to happen. So that no matter the type of improvement out there, that's going to be a concern for us, and it is our intention to get you in your driveways when you need to. So that will be a construction related thing, and again, that's a future meeting that we can discuss details and all those things. So following the removal of the pavement, we've installed any water main, any sanitary sewer repairs, none that I know of at this point, but anything like that would be done when the road is tore up would be the time to do it. And the goal here, and the reason we're talking about water main in conjunction with the street is it's really difficult if we need to install water main out there for reasons that maybe there's a group of things that are bad, maybe there's another reason why people need water. It's really hard to tear up a new street 5 years later to put in water main 2 years later, maybe it's 6 months later. We don't know, and certainly your guys' wells have been good for a long time out there, so I hope that continues for you. Benefits connecting to city water, improve fire protection out there. Anytime we have a hydrant that's located within, it'd probably be within about 250 feet of your home, that's going to improve your fire protection. anytime we can pump off of a hydrant, it's certainly preferable to finding surface water. It's faster, there's water there, it's better pressure. It's a good deal to have that availability, so your fire protection will improve. A reliable water system, I wrote that in there because right now, if your well pump goes out, your pressure tank, if something happens to that, it's on you to find somebody to fix it. If it's a city-maintained system, one, the public works director already has a notice in his pocket on his phone that says there's a problem with the water system and there's probably somebody already on it. But you call the city and the city is on it to fix it. The water is reliable, it shows up in your home, and quite honestly, probably at a better pressure and volume than you get now, or potentially, depending on your systems. We're looking at between 60 and 70 PSI out there, and as much water as you really could honestly use. So those of you that have low flows in your upstairs shower, that would be improved by connection to a municipal water supply in this case. So that's a positive out there. Water is treated to the Minnesota Department of Health standards, so we would add chlorine and fluoride as you would expect in a municipal system. I view it as a benefit just for water safety. Other people would disagree with me on that. I acknowledge that, but that is the standard from the Department of Health, and we would be doing that in this case. One additional thing, we're coming to reliability and protection. The city does have a wellhead protection plan associated with all our wells. Less so when you have private wells, and you really have very little control over what your neighbor does, no matter where your well is in proximity to them. So in this case, we like to think that we have a very safe water supply, and we certainly do by having that wellhead protection plan in place. All right, how about your existing wells out there now? Nobody's gonna make you guys fill a well in if we would put in a water system out here. What we'd ask you to do is keep your well for irrigation purposes only. Once you are connected to a municipal water supply, we can't have a potential for well water to enter into the city system, so we'd have to separate your home from that system. But certainly irrigation, any other number of uses for an existing well could be used in place, and then we wouldn't stop you from doing that. So what we do is run a water main probably right down the center line of the road, and we would stub out a service lateral to each home or each lot. If there's undeveloped lots, there's a couple on the end that haven't been developed, and we'd certainly consult with you guys on the best spot for those. But at that point, we would leave it pretty much, I would say 30 feet from the center line of the road, and we would need you guys to hook up from that point to it because we can't do work on private property. All right, and now the question that everybody came for, and I managed to ramble on for a little bit without telling you, is cost for the project. Water, street, the whole works, $1.5 million, maybe a little a hair stronger than that. Broken out, street accounts for about 2/3 of that project cost, just over $1 million, and the water main at just over $550,000. So roughly 2/3 of the street and 1/3 of it is the water main in this case. What is this going to cost me? Specifically to everybody out there, when there is a project like this, the city goes through a formal process called the 429 process, in which case the city is actually required to assess a portion of the cost to the benefiting parcels. That's assuming that we are going to bond for the project, and the project decides we'd likely have to do that. You're required by law to assess a minimum of 20%. So the city in the past for street projects has assessed 27% of the cost, with the remainder of the citizens of Rockville picking up the remaining 73% of that cost. And for street purposes, we almost always assess on a front footage basis. So if you have a 100-foot wide lot, the current rate for street assessments is $14.24 a foot. So for a 100-foot lot, you'd be $1,424 for a street assessment. And that will be payable on your property taxes or upfront if you're interested. And the council at the time of that hearing and meeting would pick a rate, an interest rate, and a term for that loan or for that assessment. Again, way down the road, that's quite a ways from now before we're talking about that one, and that is several hearings from now, so everybody will have their chance to have input on that as well. Water costs, again, we assess the benefiting properties. In this case, I would argue that each parcel receives about the same benefit from a new water service. So for my calculations this evening, which are very preliminary, I've pretty much divided by the 53 parcels out there that would be receiving services. So grand total between $9,000 and $11,000 for that assessment. In addition to that, There would be a fairly small cost for you to hire a private excavator to get from the street to your home. Those generally have ranged between $1,000 and $2,000, so it's not an insignificant number, but compared to the assessments, less. So I think you're in the 10 to 12,000 range for each parcel out there. And so that would be based on your, like I said, that would go on your property taxes and assessed over a period of time, 5, 10, I've seen go as far as 20 years. So there are options out there. You'd be allowed to pay it off at any point. There's some flexibility as far as that goes. In addition to that, obviously there's a water bill when you use the water. Give you an average idea so you guys can put this on your notes is the average resident pays about $25 a month for a water bill in the city of Rockville. And that would vary based on use, billed every 2 months, but just to give you an average monthly cost, that's what it would approximately, so. Yeah, yes, ma'am.
The 9 to 11,000, that's in addition to the per foot of road frontage?
Yes. Yep, so the water alone will be 9 to 11, and then I think for the sake of talking tonight, just say 1,500 for the average lot out there. There are a couple of lots that are more than 100 feet, but honestly, most are less frontage than 100 feet based on my looking at them. So there's a couple that are in the 200 range, those get a little tougher, but I would say most are less.
Is there any like get to a maximum?
So there is no formal maximum in a residential district. I don't think there's any out there that are larger than, well, there's one out there that's larger than, it's probably yours. One larger than that, and
Can you just repeat the questions, because it's hard to hear them?
I absolutely will repeat the question. The question was, is there a maximum for assessments? I will go into that detail at any formal assessment hearing that happens, but just to let you know, you're zone ag, I believe, in your spot there, and there is a 200-foot maximum for that. So that would be a maximum for you in that case, and I don't think, honestly, that applies to any other lots in the area aside from yours. So that's what we're talking about on that here. So again, no formal action tonight, but I would like to answer any assessment question or any engineering related questions you have, policy questions, any topics like that. I'll write them down. We'll get them to the council. The council's here to hear those questions as well. So we will certainly take that input. After tonight's meeting, like I said, we're going to document and take notes on what's said. Certainly will be videotaped and recorded, so there's plenty of information to hear in the future. If this were to move forward into a street or street and utility project, the council would order, they would order me to start the Chapter 429 assessment process, in which case there are 2 mandatory public hearings, a formal feasibility study, plans, bidding, construction. It's quite the process, but we are very preliminary in this. Like I said, nothing has been ordered. Nobody is on the hook for anything at this point. So we're here to listen and take questions. Like I said, I will answer any engineering questions directly, any policy questions, any discussion like that. I will certainly relay that, and the council will listen to those at this point. So with that said, I am ready for questions, and yeah.
You had mentioned that we would not be able to use our wells so that it doesn't go into the system. If it would go through, would we have to hook up?
A very good question. Would a mandatory hookup be required if the water system were to be installed? And unfortunately, my answer to that is it depends. It's generally a council decision. I would say eventually a mandatory hookup would be required. The time period is where that would be given some leeway. I've seen anywhere between 1 and 5 years. 1 is definitely the most common, where you have 1 year to hook up, but that would be a council decision at that time.
Community up by Leech Lake has the same system, the water line running under the main center of the road, and they had nothing but problems with freeze up because the snow was banked alongside the road, and the frost goes deeper when you drive over the road and it's not covered with snow. Where in the ditches it's covered with snow and the frost doesn't go down as deep. Why do they put the line in the center of the road?
The question being, why locate the line in the center of the road when the roadways are more susceptible to freezing? In this case, I have very little concern about freezing because that water main would be sitting in the water table. We have a very high water table out there. I don't think we're gonna have a major problem with that. But generally, they're put in the roadway for accessibility purposes. We know where it is, there's no private utilities there. It's in a good location, it's protected. But that's why it's generally down there. Your point about, you know, snow removal and potential freezing is absolutely spot on. I've had things freeze up in the streets more so than in the ditch, certainly.
How deep would it be?
Depth of the water main would be 8 feet to the top of the pipe. So that should get us well below any frost depth in the first place, but we all had frost, what was it, 2 or 3 winters ago where we had an awful lot of people running water lines and that's 7, 8 feet of cover in those too, so. Yes, sir.
You had said that, you know, you grind a road and then so we have like a gravel road to drive on. That still doesn't account for digging 8 feet down, dewatering. The neighbor across the street from me had to dewater to hook up to the city sewer. Took him 3 days of round-the-clock dewatering just to dig down to the sewer line. How do you plan on dewatering, digging 8 feet, and giving us access at the same time, in and out?
Question, if everybody didn't hear it, was how are we going to provide access with difficult groundwater conditions? I will not sugarcoat that. It's going to be a challenge. It will be a challenge. It's not the first time it's been done. It can be done. So what we would do is we would dig in, and quite honestly, if we have to widen the road a little bit for the time being to get away from that trench, an 8-foot depth isn't insurmountable. We certainly dig a lot deeper than that, but it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a headache, but we will certainly do whatever we can to minimize the impact. There's going to be an impact, though. In the back, sir.
Yeah, do the 53 homeowners on Pleasant Road, did they vote yes or no for this water or not?
The question is, will there be a yes or no vote? I would say likely not. Generally, that's not how those things are handled. Generally, it's a council decision with you guys providing feedback to the council. The council's going to hear you tonight. They're going to hear your concerns. They're going to weigh those against the concerns of the whole city.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
Why can't you put the water alongside the side of the road instead of through the center?
The question was, why couldn't you put the water alongside the road? You certainly could. We absolutely.
Why can't we do that 10 years from now when they're finally ready to do it then instead of doing it now?
The question
Or
is,
in 2 years?
yes, you absolutely could. The question is, just becomes cost-wise. So now we are directional drilling outside of the roadway. There's other private utilities out in that area, and it becomes a factor of, is it more cost-effective to do it now or not? My thought being, we can't afford to have to rip up a brand-new road in a couple of years. That's my.
But if you put it alongside the road, you're not ripping up the brand new road.
What I'm saying, you
And
know.
putting them alongside the road, a measurement problem, if it gets mapped out, it shows exactly where that line is, there should be no problem taking it up alongside the road.
And that's fine, but, okay, now let's go back to your concern about the winter. We have a 3-foot snowbank there, and we have a water main leak under the edge of the roadway. Now we're digging through all that stuff, plus, there's a reason they put them in the streets, it's for accessibility, and during wintertime is one of those times. It's easier to get to, it's maintained, it's plowed, we can get there. Absolutely, we could install this outside of the roadway at a later date. I'm saying it's more feasible and more cost-effective to do it this way now. It's my recommendation to do it this way now, but that doesn't mean it is impossible. I absolutely could do it in a few years, 5 feet off the side of the roadway, drill it in, directional drill services across. It just becomes more costly, and we don't get the new street and water main for 1.5 million. Now we're at 1.8 million or something to that effect. So
I would think it would be more costly to tear up the street to fix it, rather than to tear up the ditch to fix it.
it would be,
Well, then why are you saying it would be more costly?
because I know I can get access to it. It's not anybody's front yard. I know it's in the
It
street.
wouldn't be their front yard, it would be in the ditch.
It's certainly in the road right away.
Dave, what elevation is sewer lines run at?
The sewer lines out there are in that 8-foot range as well. They're directional drilled, so they're
Yeah,
close to that.
now the sewer line is in the ditch now, on the far side of the road.
Correct.
Away from the lake. So the majority of those lines are all going under the road.
They are.
It's gonna be directly in the way where the water line is gonna be.
It would be.
So how are you gonna maintain sewer service while you're digging up, trying to put it all through at the same elevation?
That wouldn't be the only thing we're crossing. We're crossing any number of private services, and it's very common to have to deal with those. It is absolutely an issue, and it's something that we'll have to mark each once the contractor knows they're there and is aware of it. But yeah, you have to dig around them, and that's another reason for avoiding the directional drilling, is because they just don't have that control, whereas if you're open cutting it, you can control that. Yes, ma'am.
When you said it's 22 feet right now, average, how wide, when you're talking about others, you're talking about buildings?
I think the plan, based on what I've heard, would be to put it back very similar in size to what's out there now.
And have exactly the same size road,
That would be correct, yes.
which to me makes absolutely no sense. There's walkers, there's bikers, it's a windy road, and you look at other roads and you go, why did they do this? Okay, so if there's any chance to actually make it a road that's safer and people can actually be on, it doesn't make sense to me to make the same road that's there.
Yeah, and that is certainly one of the options out there, was to put on some sort of, we would likely call it a parking lane, but it could be used for walking and biking and that kind of thing. There's some legalities with calling it a parking lane versus a bike lane.
Would that increase the cost?
Certainly.
So this was the same road, okay?
I'd look at the cost, you say it's, the cost of water is $515,000.
Yep.
Okay, the 53 residents on that, you take the costs that you gave, it's gonna cost each of us, we're paying for the whole project anyhow, on the water side. So if it's delayed and we're paying more later on, or now, that's something people have to think about.
That's a very good point. The question was, if we are paying $550,000 for the water now and the residents are bearing the vast majority of that cost, if not 100% of that cost, why is it not your choice to have an option and risk it in the future? You know, if it's more in the future, it costs you more in the future, and that's a valid question. I think this is the most cost-effective way. It doesn't mean it's the only way, that's for certain.
So cost effective, you're saying directional drilling would be more expensive than dewatering the whole road, which is what it's gonna amount to get down 8 feet on the whole road. Because all of us have seen people hooked up and it's a major process.
It's a wet mess. So directional drilling is a concern when we have as many sewer services and that kind of thing crossing as we do. It is not insurmountable. It is definitely something that it'll get closer to an open cut project, but if we're tearing up the street anyway to put in a new street, that's the time that becomes cost effective, because you're putting in the new street anyway. So.
About how much more would it be to put the water in later versus doing it now? Is it that much more?
It completely depends upon how many years later we're talking about. Are we talking about location of that water main? I haven't looked at, the private utilities have a mistake out there. I don't know what's out there. I don't even have an answer to how much more it would be. My thought is it's more. I'm fairly confident it's going to be more. I don't know what that is.
50 grand more, 100 grand more, twice as much.
I don't think it'll be twice. I would say 50% again would be fair.
The other thing is when you get the road tarred, are you gonna get like 3 or 4 bids for this, I would hope?
We will actually get as many bids as the market will bear. So municipally funded project like this, we're required to advertise for bids, and whoever is qualified to do the work is allowed to put a bid in. I would be very surprised to see less than 3 or 4 bids on the project.
And what did you use for your estimate then for the $1 million for the tarring?
What did I use for my estimate? My estimate is based on projects bid this year out of my office.
What other costs are we to expect?
What other costs are you to expect?
Water access charge.
Water access charge would certainly apply here. There's been discussion in the past about whether you put that into the project or whether you put that upfront cost.
Okay, then my next question is, what is the city's liability in this? You're saying in the road part, they'll pay 73%.
Correct.
But yet you want us to pay 100% of this.
So the policy for new utilities is to pass.
2016 policy is $37.71 a foot. You're proposing to charge me 3 times that for my size lot. So
the numbers we have are very preliminary, and I'm trying to get you guys a number based on what it would cost to assess based on 100% assessment, because that's the worst case scenario here.
Why are we bidding on 100? Why are we figuring 100% assessment when the city's schedule of assessment for 2016 is $37.71 a foot?
And that is intended for reconstruction of water main or water main where it already exists. In the cases where it is a new service, it is generally assessed at 100%. The council has the option to lower that number or decrease it or go to the $37 a foot.
It's says water main replacement is 75% of it.
Good. It's a fair question, and you know what, that assessment
If
policy.
I'm paying 100% of the charge, why is the city also charging me a whack charge? They have no liability in this. Why are they charging me extra on top of that?
There are fixed.
They're not recovering any of their costs because there are none for them.
David, that would be the water tower.
Yeah, that is, it's the water tower, it's the wells, it's the infrastructure that's already put in place. That's what that covers. Question?
Dave, why are we, this project sounds like a can of worms, you know, I mean, it's really difficult.
It is.
Why are we trying to do that when the majority of the people here don't want the water? Why don't we just spend the limited funds we have improving the road?
That's a very good point. You know, the water, like I said, the water was planned to come down here, that's why it's included in this conversation. Yes, I would agree, it's expensive and it is going to be a challenge. This is not going to be an easy project, and that's why the cost is where it is because this project is going to be a challenge. So as far as the policy discussion on whether the water main goes in or not, I'm going to defer to the council on that, but like I said, my recommendation was now's the time to do it if we're going to do it. I think in back was first.
Can we just see a raise of hands, how many people actually want this water main now versus later?
I'm not going to call for that.
What?
I'm not going to call for that, but you can.
I will. Because then you can pan us with that thing and everybody will know. How many people want the water right now? Raise your hand. Okay, room shows 1. How many people do not want the water now but are willing to put it in alongside the road at a later time possibly? Thank you very much. Do you see the whole room? Raise their hand, except for 1. That's a good idea. It gives you an idea. Now the council knows where most of the residents stand.
Yep, and that's fair. I will say, I admire your courageousness for raising your hand. Yes, I appreciate that because that's a difficult thing to do. You guys all know the survey went out a while ago. We did have more than one positive response to that. We did have 6 people that said they wanted water of the 36 received. So we did, that's not.
Of the 6 people, they might not have been informed that it was going to cost them $9 grand.
It did say
plus, plus to drag it from the road to my house, which is not 100 feet away.
Yep.
It's going to cost me $4,000 or $5,000, and then I'm going to have to pay $500 a month for water and a hookup charge.
Yep.
And my well is beautiful. I just spent $1,580 on it less than 8 months ago.
And that is the reason this is a difficult discussion. I know you guys have good water out there, and I know nobody wants to pay an assessment, that's for sure. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm being devil's advocate, I don't want 53 neighbors on my butt. But I'm not naive enough to know, and I put my hand up that I want it later. But I'm not, because my house is a year and a half old. And I've got a lot more money in my well in the last year and a half than even yours, so I don't need one now. How do we get 53 people seriously to agree when that later time is? I think that becomes the issue. Is it 2 years, is it 5 years, is it 10 years? You know, for my money, I'm still paying a sewer, I think, for a while. I don't know, my dad wasn't smart enough to pay that off for me, so we still have that bill.
Why do you think in another 2 years, 5 years, whatever, you need water anyway?
I don't know, at some point I'm gonna have, at some point I'm probably gonna have well issues, right? I don't know when.
I've been there for 40 years on wells, nothing.
Well, I'm just saying it could
I doubt
happen,
whether you ever
and
will.
some people said the question was at some point in time, do we want water?
How do we know
My
when-
question is, how do you know when that time is?
Yeah, that's a good
right?
question. How do we know when that time is?
David, let's get back to control. Let's make your question directly to David, not to each other. We'll get out of
David,
here.
when do we think we have to?
I do not have the crystal ball that says when your wells are going to start going bad, when something happens that'll make everybody need water simultaneously. Whether or not that time exists, I don't know, but, Sue?
Dave, so one of the things you said is the cost is where it is because it will be a challenge putting it out there. So if it were, and I think this would just be helpful for council as we think about it. So what would the cost be if it was in a sort of more normal situation where you weren't doing the dewatering and all that? Like about how much does it add on to the project cost?
I would say we're seeing a premium of $150,000 to $200,000 because of the difficulty here.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
He was first.
Now, what happens, you got your estimates and all this, but what happens when they start dewatering, there's a huge overrun. We're gonna end up biting that too.
Well, the assessment cost would be fixed before that point, so actually the city would end up with that cost.
So they will,
But you
okay.
guys are all residents of the city, so yes, you're right, that's what happens. So, the project we bid beforehand, we know what the costs were before they were fully assessed. At any point, the council can say, no, this doesn't make sense, these bids came in too high, you know, if we got that far down the road. So there is never no turning back point until the first shovel's in the ground, then we're going. And at that point, it's kind of on the contractor, because we'll make sure it is on the contractor.
Okay, so when you compared it to the bids this year, none of those bids this year of projects being done were in our situation. None of them have that water problem, because we all know what happens when you start digging down,
Correct.
trying to put water. It is down everybody's place,
It is.
and they can't get it out. I mean, it's bad. That's one house.
Yep.
One. So when you come say you got that, you're using the estimates, those were not from a situation like ours.
They're not, but what I'm doing is I'm pulling from a lot of different projects, and I can say, well, I know paving, once we have a good gravel base here, is gonna cost the same here as it would, you know, 3 miles down the road without this situation. So that number, I take that into account.
Okay, but you're talking about road, I'm talking about water now.
Yeah, okay.
That's huge.
Yeah, and what I do is basically, I take a look at what the prices are now, so it gives me a material cost, and then when the contractor marks up that cost for their installation, I increase the cost on the markup based on my estimate of what's out there and the difficulty.
But it still is compared to not our situation.
It is, but with an additional factor on there for the difficulty. Nobody has bid a project like this that I'm aware of recently, so that's why I can't compare it to that. But
So basically, they're not doing it in a situation like ours right now.
I don't know a lot of other communities. I can't say specifically whether these projects are going on or not. Rockville is in general a unique community when it comes to this kind of thing, so I wouldn't be surprised if it would be difficult.
David, a question here is, do you have to dewater just to do the reconstruction of the road? Will there be dewatering just to reconstruct the road?
I would think not. It would be my intention that we would not.
Question on the system itself, is it adequate to handle the extra people?
It is, yes.
What happens if that Brentwood estate that was supposedly going to pay for the whole thing starts developing even more? Now what happens? Now we run out of water, then what?
No, we won't run out of water. That system was sized for a pretty expansive area here based on 2004 when that system was sized. We were looking at development going like crazy as
Why
everybody
didn't we
knows.
put it in when it first went in?
Why didn't we put it in?
Why was it put in just for that area and not brought down the road?
The idea being, it wasn't at that point, the road wasn't being replaced, so nobody was going to replace it for the sake of the water main was the idea.
So is there any issues with the cost of that tower and everything else not being covered while you're trying to come down our road and force us to pay for water we don't need? I mean, we could pay for a road and assess a road at $4 a foot or whatever it is for a road. Why would we need water when every well in that area is good?
That's a,
Seriously, why would we want to spend that much money?
It's a fair
Use that
policy
for the rest
question.
of the city.
it's a fair question.
If the developer would not have defunct and
Yeah,
it would
where's the
have,
bond?
and it would have gone in, would this water even be an issue for our road?
Well,
If
yeah,
we were doing this roadway, it would be my recommendation that the
Not-
city,
You're gonna run a dead-end water line down a road like that? That doesn't make sense.
it's part of the ultimate system. No matter whether that development was full up there, whether other development had spurred in town, it would be my recommendation that we follow that master plan and say, this road is being redone, now's the time to look at water. That's why we're looking at it.
It's not even
Yes, ma'am.
I have a road question.
Yeah.
A while ago, well, a number of years ago, the city had looked at getting one garbage company to cover the city. Currently, we have 4 companies that come down our road a week. And then every other week, we have 8 trucks coming down. If you're gonna do this road, are you gonna do something about getting us on one carrier, or is it gonna be, oh, I figured that was a you question.
I want to talk to you because I totally support what you're saying, and that would be a great argument and a great discussion to have with the council, but it doesn't have anything to do with the water issue tonight, so I want to talk to you about the
Road
garbage.
and water tonight.
Now, we're talking about reconstructing the road, and do we want to do the water with it?
We don't want.
Garbage haulers, well, let me help answer some of these questions. Municipalities have 2 ways to raise revenue, taxes and sales. So we pay our bills through taxes and water and sewer sales. That's what we have to offer. All municipalities want to sell water and want to sell sewer. Our ordinances, and all municipal ordinances are designed to get you to hook up to the city services so that they can sell you water and sewer to raise revenue,
Pay for what?
expenses.
Pay for what?
The operation of the city, everything. Everything involved with operating a city.
If that's the case, why didn't you put it in 2000 with the city?
That's a great question too, but I think it's all tied to the road. The road wasn't made.
No, but they could have put the water in alongside the sewer, which is alongside the road, which doesn't.
I wasn't here in 2000, and I don't think it's a fair question to really ask me now. But you know that we're trying to sell water and sewer.
We don't want to buy it.
I understand.
They sell cars, you don't want to buy the car, you don't buy the car.
We totally
sell water, we don't want to buy the sewer, we don't want to buy it.
So that you understand something, the city engineer, the staff, and council knows, nobody wants to pay higher taxes or pay assessments. That's a given. You wouldn't even have to have said any, pardon me?
For poor quality water.
Sure. Nobody wants to pay higher taxes or assessments. We know that. And I think it's really simple. Do we invest $1 million and risk tearing up that road in
You're
2,
charging us
5, or
anyway.
10? That's the question that we wanted to ask you tonight, and we want your feedback, and we're getting that.
Question to you or him, whichever. The water, the city water, I don't know many people that live in the actual city of Rockville, but the ones I know don't drink their water. And I don't know how many people that live on our road love their water. So not only would we have to pay to get the water hooked up, now we're gonna have to buy bottled water because you can't stand to drink the water.
I don't know that to be a fact either.
The few people I know that live in the city of Rockville do not drink their water. And I don't know how many people on our road do not drink their water. I think everyone likes our water.
Well, hasn't there
So-
been problems with the quality of the water in the tower?
On Brentwood Hills,
Yes.
there's always a maintenance concern when you have fewer residents using it. That's all there is to it. It's an operations issue. As far as I know, the water
Can you
quality is.
explain that further? I would like to understand that.
Okay, so
What is the problem?
what is the problem out there?
There
Basically,
really is no problem. We have to flush that water more
Right.
frequently because we don't have users.
it's an increased maintenance headache to get the water moving and keep it fresh.
Don't want to get.
Yes, ma'am.
If the council votes to do this and you start with the 429 process, what kind of time frame are we looking at?
So the council would likely order a feasibility study would be the first step. Complete that feasibility study, and then we would hold a public improvement hearing as the first public meeting in that process. At that point, we have a very similar meeting, and I probably show a very similar presentation, and really it's almost the same meeting we're having here right now, but more formal. And the council's sitting up front taking public comment, just like they're sitting in back taking public comment this evening. And then at that point, the council would decide based on assessments, projected assessments, estimated cost based on a detailed feasibility study, whether or not it was worthwhile to move forward with plans and specifications. At that point, following that, they would accept the plans and specifications, authorize advertisement for bids, we'd open bids, and then at that point, the council would have two options. They could either hold that final assessment hearing before or after construction. And long story short, we have a multiple month process ahead of us if this moves forward.
So potentially, would we be looking at next year, year after that, 2 years from now?
Next year would be ideal if we kept things moving right now. If they slip much further, you're stuck with it being a couple years down the road. It goes fast. And back first.
Are there any other roads in Rockville where city water has been brought in to homes that have wells already? Or is this the first road in the history of Rockville that's had water brought down to existing homes with existing water wells?
I don't know that I can speak to the history.
The system was basically
In the last
designed for
10
new-
years.
I mean, it was pretty much designed for new construction up in Brentwood, I understand. And that fizzled and market tanked right after all this happened, so I see this as we're just trying to find a way to pay for this water tower that's sitting there and the city's not getting any revenue, and we're looking for the easiest piece of fruit to pick, and so we're going down Pleasant Road, and, you know, we're like people, so I guess we all can just afford it, and it's no big deal, just go after us.
I think I'm on the opposite spectrum from Dave Meyer here. He just put in a new well. When I walk out of my house knowing that that well is 35 years old, I wish I had city water, because I bet ain't real good.
For $5,000.
Yeah, I don't, I'd rather have city water, my opinion.
Now, I know there's road projects scheduled that are being worked on for 2017.
There are.
Are any of those included in getting water or something else added like that?
None of those are in a location where water would be easily accessible or is located without an extensive trunk water main process. And if they are, they'll be noted in that design.
What is the long-term plan? Is it to add water to all those areas that you said? Or, and is it included with the timing of roads? Or what's the long-term plan?
The long-term,
Right now, I have only known of, the only areas that city water has been added is in that development.
Yep.
And now us. Those are the only ones since 2005.
Yeah, and that, I haven't seen any meat on that, so I believe you're correct. Yep.
So that just doesn't seem reasonable.
Let's-
Can I throw a suggestion to the city of Rockville?
1 second, go ahead.
If they're looking for revenue, why aren't they doing it in a place where it's easier to put it in, like the opposite side of the lake, where the elevation is higher and they don't have a water problem? Surface water problem.
What year was Lake Road redone?
2005. 2005.
Yeah,
It was redone with the sewer project for reasons I don't know.
Now, what we're saying here tonight is that we need more usage on the water, the city likes more revenue. You know, Marty, we are trying to create that. We're trying to sell a 40-acre piece to a developer down where the wells are and the 2 wells are and the pump house. We are trying to sell a 40-acre to a developer to create development. With that, we would create more revenue for the city, and maybe, just maybe, we could conquer this problem by getting more water usage. Help your problem.
I would hope, don't take my statement that municipalities are in the business of selling water and sewer as the primary reason for doing this. The primary reason for having this public information meeting is to determine for the council, do we replace that road with or without water? It comes down that simple. It's really that simple. Yes, cities want to sell water and sewer to create revenue, and to hopefully lower taxes. That's the whole goal, is to pay for expenditures through sales and not taxes.
Plus not having to pump your tower every so often.
Absolutely, sure. I think the council wants, if they got a big decision ahead, should they spend $1 million on that road reconstruction and not put water in water?
You're charging us for it anyway.
Sure, I understand.
It doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem like it's a democracy when you have a group of people who say, we don't want this, but yet we have to pay for it. That doesn't seem right to me.
I can appreciate what you're saying, but the council has to take in the big picture of all the taxpayers. And so they're listening to you tonight, and I'm glad I'm not in their shoes.
You know, can't we find a way to fund some of this where we spread it out over more people than just the people on Pleasant Road?
If the
To
whole
help
city is supposed
on the
to
water?
benefit from it.
As the city engineer said, those are decisions council can look at. Absolutely.
With the extensive dewatering that's gonna be done, what kind of environmental impact study needs to be done? Because the lake is right there, where's all that water gonna go? The lake, when we moved out there, they were dewatering just to do sewer hookups, and the lake went down even quite a bit that year, and now this is gonna be conventional excavating. There's gonna be a major, I don't know how that lake's not gonna drop a little bit, in addition to where all that water is gonna run off to.
Yeah, the DNR would certainly have something to say about that based on a water permit, because we pulled more than 1 million gallons. Yes, it would be studied, it'd have to be.
Not to mention the safety factor is you're trying to de-water. I mean, how can emergency vehicles get down if we needed them? I mean, there's a lot that goes into that whole.
We're gonna have to wrap it up real quick. Any urgent questions?
What is the planned duration? I know we talked about how do we get it approved, but how long, if they start digging, how long would the project take?
I would guess we'd be looking at a good portion of the construction season, probably 3 to 4 months, start to finish. It'd be a long months.
I have 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
First one is, you do core sampling in the road to be determine how deep the stuff's grading now?
The first question was, did we do any core sampling out there to see what's out there now? No, that's generally done as part of a feasibility study.
So that's an unknown. Now, the area is prolific in frost boils.
It is.
Clay content's pretty high. One concern might be, once you start digging, you're gonna discover you're gonna have to dig a lot deeper than you planned, and it will raise the cost.
I have planned for a pretty robust section that's worked in Rockville before. That's what I have in the estimate.
And does that include matting?
Yes, it does.
Second question.
Well, you got a couple in there, Paul.
Have you considered doing any well tests out there to determine the condition of the present water system? How safe it is?
The water gets tested how often?
Weekly or monthly, I can't remember when they tested
The
it.
water's being tested, we have to meet Minnesota Pollution Control Standards.
I can't read.
No, I think he was talking about testing the private wells
Private
to make
wells.
sure that our personal water is good.
We have not had
Judgmental.
a private well.
No.
Marty, I am not totally in favor of this whole water thing, but I understand the road needs to rebuild. I understand that's where water mains go. I get all of that. I understand the infrastructure of everything. I would be more in favor of this if the city would share their portion and give me this at the cost of $37 a foot like you have in your 2016 costs.
I'm pretty sure they heard you. And that will be taken under consideration. We're gonna have to wrap it up. We got a council meeting to do at 6.
I got one.
If you have questions that you want or didn't get answered, email them to me.
On this road, if we did not put this water in, could we just resurface this road to save us all a bunch of money?
To Paul's comments about the
Well,
Not rebuild.
we don't need to rebuild the road, just resurface it.
Correct.
I would say that looking at the failures out there now, the reason they're failing is because we have poor subgrade underneath. I don't want to put a brand new road for even less than $1 million if we're not going to get our 20 years of life out of it. And I don't think we necessarily would based on what I see.
Well, resurfacing is way cheaper.
It is cheaper, but it becomes an exercise and do it right the first time or Band-Aids. And I would rather see it done right, but it's an option. We can make that determination based on soil bores when we get them.
You haven't done any repairs.
I don't think, no, from what I've seen, the whole road is not the same condition.
It is not.
The road coming in from 137 up to the first house is much better quality.
It is.
It's just that back stretch. And then once you get to Pleasant Estates, the road is much better. So it's maybe a quarter of that's really bad. Not all of it would have to be reconstructed.
And I did note that as well, as there are areas that are worse than others, and that's the area where we know we need a reconstruction for sure. And if we can get by with a reclaim and overlay, I would certainly be willing to do that because speed of construction and the headache that this is going to be out here, faster is better.
One more, then we gotta quit.
If the road now made it 30 years, why would you assume a new road would make it 20?
Because as we see out there, the road didn't make it 30 years. We
Wow.
haven't had a great road for some time.
It hasn't been 10 years since it's been terrible.
For those that live on Lake Road or Pride Lake Road, I'm getting a lot of complaints.
Take a look at
That
Lake
thing is
Road.
10 years old, and I don't know why it's in such bad shape. It's only 10 years old. Again, if you didn't get your questions answered, email me. Or stop in and visit.
You don't do any repairs.
Thank you for coming.
I have a question for you council people. When we have the DNR, gave us the right to have input on a public access, we got to come to meetings, get input. It was a